Critics presents Reading D&D Aloud. Episode 70. D&D is not in the Innovation Biz. Conversation with two D&D designers.
Greetings once again, listeners, to this podcast with no name, but it is a podcast where we have amazing, energizing, life-affirming discussions about the tabletop role-playing game industry with luminaries who brighten that industry. And today, we have a pair of designers that I am absolutely delighted to have on here. First up, we have Rob Heinsoo, one of the leading minds behind Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. He's also the co-creator of 13th Age, a role-playing game that blends narrative freedom with crunchy mechanics in amazing ways. He's a designer, a world builder, a relentless innovator, and a man with nothing in his pantry. Rob, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction.
Hey,
That was I'll have to crib pieces of that. It was great.
Well, thank you. Also joining us is Andy Collins, a multi-tour veteran of Wizards of the Coast. Andy,
Wow. Yeah.
he did. Go
They
ahead,
called me
Rob.
back
Go
for
ahead.
Just one more job.
I mean, every time Andy thinks he's out, they pull him back in,
When I'm feeling particularly full of myself, I compare it to like when a great baseball player comes back to their original team for that one last season before retiring.
So they can retire the jersey.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like.
Oh no.
Well, we may venture into those waters. So Andy, along with Rob and Jim Wyatt, was co-creator of D&D 4th edition, but his design credits don't stop there. The thing I'd love to hear about from him that we are unlikely to get to this evening is his work on the Saga edition of the Star Wars role-playing game. He was also one of the guys working on Project Sigil for Wizards until it was essentially strangled in its cradle by the company earlier this year. But please behold a brilliant designer and a real mensch, Andy Collins.
Howdy, folks.
Well, I had you guys on here to talk about the resurgence of 4th edition, but who knows where this is going to go. But I will start here because the thing that sparked all of this was a post on Reddit, and the title of the post was "Best Combat System You've Played in?" ? And pretty quickly, the conversation turned to 4th edition, and largely in laudatory terms. The things that showed up in this Reddit post were things like, man, it seems like the more I hear about D&D 4th edition, it was the best version of D&D. It's a shame it was so overly hated back in the day. Another comment was tactically fantastic, best combat system D&D ever had. Another post was D&D 4E, amazing tactical fun play, if a bit long. And then the last comment I bothered to copy and paste was D&D 4E by a wide margin. And for listeners who were not aware, D&D was not particular. D&D 4E was not particularly warmly received by a lot of fans back in the day, but it is clearly having a moment on the internet and in fandom right now, where people are reaching back to it and appreciating it, and I'm seeing it influence designs today. A lot of people say Draw Steel is very influenced by 4th edition. So I could ask a question, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to put that there and see what you guys say.
It doesn't surprise me that folks still groove on the combat. That was definitely one of the things we spent the most time and focus on. As Rob has said before in other interviews, both with and without me, that edition of D&D was the first and maybe the one that most tried to embrace Dungeons and Dragons as a game first, as needing a solid mechanical underpinning that was our primary focus is what is the gameplay like, and then trying to layer on the role playing aspects beyond that, whereas most other editions have come at it from the other direction. I'm not going to say that one of those is better or worse, just we were doing it a little bit differently.
The other direction being simulation. And
Yeah.
one of the big issues with third and fourth edition was that we already knew that third edition was a really excellent simulation. And in fact, people with it, when you have a really skillful simulation, people kind of think about the world and in its terms. And third edition had that thing of like, you're going to build monsters with exactly the same stats that you're building player characters. Whereas fourth edition and 13th Age and several other games have the idea that, no, look, a monster is coming at you once in this encounter, possibly more if it's a big villain, but probably just once. And it doesn't need to be treated in the exact same way that heroes are. And so so what you end up with there is you can focus in on what's really significant about a monster and makes the experience of fighting it great. And that was one of the things that fourth edition offered. Now, we tended to a lot of times when games first like step out of the paradigm that they were in, um, it's difficult for people to go ahead and fully. Well, first of all, it's even hard for designers to embrace that. I'm going to use an example that's not D&D. Robin Laws designed the original game called Hero Wars, which was meant to be a narrative storytelling combat system and interaction system about Glorantha, the world that RuneQuest was set in, Greg Stafford's world. But in between the time Robin turned it in and the time it got published, the people at Chaosium who were developing it were like, well, this game doesn't have rules for crossbows. We're going to put in rules for crossbows. And it ended up being that what Robin had designed as like, no, you're having a fight and it's just a narrative and we're going to use the same dice the whole time. And yeah, there's some abilities to change things. Got this weird armor movement, crossbow combat, missile fire system implemented on it because people didn't quite grasp that. And so you like use an example from fourth edition. Like the original goal would have been, hey man, we're not simulating these monsters. We're just going to use the abilities that are really important. But the department wasn't comfortable with that. You know, the department kind of needed to go ahead and say, let's put more abilities on. You know, what abilities should a dragon have? All dragons have, you know, and stuff like that. And that's just an example of what happens when a new paradigm hits. The truth is the paradigm was very difficult for some players of third edition to grasp now and enjoy. Having said that, it was designed as a game that would like appeal to newcomers. And what's really interesting to me, I think, is that there were a lot of new people who played it, who really enjoyed it, you know, and didn't know they weren't, you know, and hadn't really. And when they went back to the earlier simulation model, were like, whoa, that's a bit much, you know. Andy, do you remember our editors? One of the funny reasons that it changed was that Wizards editors were going crazy trying to go ahead and deal with third edition. Like there was always a mistake made and our fans were able to point them out to us. And then it was people feeling terrible because they're editors who don't want to make mistakes. And Pathfinder went through the same kind of thing later on, where it's like because they use 3.5 essentially as the basis of Pathfinder 1.8. It's like you can work so hard to get details right that make no difference at the table. And I think that I've now rambled a lot. And Andy's point was, yeah, we tried to make it really matter at the table. Everything that was there was supposed to like be important to actually playing and the player's experience. And I think that when it comes to people playing fourth edition, I actually have a question for both of you. I mean, I see the influence in Draw Steel, and I saw the influence in Pathfinder 2. Are tons of people actually playing fourth edition right now, or are they talking about it?
I could
It doesn't seem like people are. It seems like people are talking about it. I'm not positive people are playing it precisely.
So I had some things leak from Wizards of the Coast recently. And what was the D&D online service that helped people play fourth
Oh,
edition? What was it again?
what was the what?
Uh,
Oh, the one, the D&D. Oh
the
God.
the Uber name for the entire project was GleeMax, but that was much more than just D&D.
So
Yeah,
in
the character builder,
I
the
forget
Yeah.
I'd have to go look at what was leaked to me, but in it I had the gross dollar figures for people that were still using that service
Oh,
and
the
pay.
D&D Insider, I think was
That's
it.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have the grosses for that, I think up through 2020. And so I can't tell you through today, but I'll tell you that they were still logging enough people paying for that subscription through 2020
awesome.
that it appears on their gross receipt sheets.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it was definitely trailing off, but and I'd have to go look. I'm gonna guess I think it was still north of $1 million that they were making a year from people playing fourth edition,
Cool.
up through 2020. And
Yeah, that's
that's
good.
something, you know.
Yeah,
That
that's
like,
good.
I will also add that again, I teach at a school, and I have a every woman under 30 plays D&D now, but they all started with fifth edition, and a lot of them are extending fingers and toes backwards in time. And I definitely had one person come up to me and be like, "So I've started buying fourth edition books and reading them, and it just seems so much fun." And again, not playing it, but just from a like,
Yeah.
I'm into D&D now and I'm exploring it. And seeing this thing, what I would say is maybe, just maybe, speaking very broadly here, this is a Picasso situation where, Picasso, I think he sold like a painting during his lifetime, then he dies, and suddenly the world is ready for it. And again, maybe the world is just ready for fourth edition D&D in some way, shape, or form in 2025. I don't know, but it definitely like, it feels like a thing that is happening. It feels like a moment, and I agree with you. I don't know how many people are actually playing it, but like going back and reading the books is engaging with the game.
And if people are playing Draw Steel or Pathfinder 2 or 13th Age, they are playing versions of the game that are closer to fourth edition and learned a lot from it. Whereas fifth edition pretty much, it's like, stop me if you disagree, but deliberately decided, no, we're not going to learn, no, we're not going to, that stuff,
But
no.
I don't think that's entirely true.
Okay,
I think the newest editions couch some fourth edition concepts
inside.
deeper into the
Yep,
simulation, right?
yep,
I mean, there's
yep,
short rests and long rests.
yep.
There's hit dice that you can spend at the end of combat, which are a lot like healing surges. Like D&D didn't
A
let
lot
you
like,
fix yourself without a cleric or a
and and
magic
those were
wand.
things that were very, very controversial in the
Yeah,
fourth edition, but yeah.
yeah. So like there are aspects
Okay.
of the that design that are still there, but I think the thing that Fifth uh, decided that it needed to lean on much more heavily was that simulationist aspect, right? And I think that's because, and it's hard to say that they're wrong, they believe that that's what their audience, their core existing audience, and the
Sure.
potential audience they had to win over wanted out of a fantasy role playing game. Now, in the meantime, we've seen an awful lot of non-simulationist games, whether they call themselves role-playing games or tabletop board games,
Yep.
spring up in that space of like, no, we're going to focus our efforts more in this area. Uh, I think part of that's just the maturity of the edition, right? Like we've seen this in D&D's lifespan many, many times that as a game gets a little long in the tooth, people who have been playing it start looking
Looking for something
for
else.
slightly different experiences. It's not a judgment on the game. It's just, hey, you know what? I've been playing this experience for a while. I want to try something that speaks a little more to my tastes. Dungeons and Dragons has to encompass a very large pool of players, which means it kind of has to try to be everything to everybody, as any you know
Yep.
piece of entertainment that's
Yep.
appealing that widely does. If you find something that leans into what you really like and leans away from the stuff you don't care as much about, well, maybe that's your off ramp into a different version of the experience.
I think you're right in cultural terms as well, in the sense that when, for example, when fourth edition came out, people had decided that um, I think that the population had sort of players had sort of noticed that 3.5 was getting a little bit old. But while we were doing fourth edition, there were ideas that were coming into the third edition books that were actually very exciting, sort of like Book of Nine Swords and other things like that. And so by the weird thing was the audience didn't actually feel like, oh man, please change everything. The impetus to change everything was very much a wizard's um,
Yes.
business decision. And I think, I've said this in other interviews, but I do sort of believe it still. Something that Jonathan Tweet mentioned after, because he was in my fourth edition campaign, and after we were talking about it, everything, he said, when you're doing a brand new edition of a beloved game, change and you radically change the system, don't also radically change the world. Change one or the other. Don't change both. And I think that one of the things that happened is that, I mean, look at Forgotten Realms for crazy ass reasons that I don't really want to go into here, and I'll call it crazy ass reasons. Um, the the timeline was advanced 100 years so that most of the characters who weren't elven were dead. What the hell? Do you just want to kill your audience? And that carrying over into the world of like, hey, what you thought was a demon, it's a devil, and how important was that? Well, it was important if we were going to quote, I don't know, make it our own or something, but it wasn't what the audience was looking for at all. And so a lot of people, okay, the people who are really enjoying fourth edition now are enjoying it as a game. A lot of the people who could have maybe enjoyed it as a game hated it as a world when it first came out. And you don't have to nowadays, a lot of people, you can be sophisticated gamers and decide what you want out of Dungeons and Dragons. And, if you're like looking at saying, what's the best system? You're already looking at all these different D&Ds. And so it's a different judgment point, I think, quite a bit. And games like Draw Steel and Pathfinder 2 don't have to carry the I am D&D, which
That's the
what
thing to
you
talk
said,
about.
Andy,
Wow.
it's heavy. It's a heavy weight to be the one.
So,
So,
uh, have either of you looked? I think it's a Critical Role's next campaign.
um, I have not. It's they're maybe using Daggerheart
They're using
and
D&D 2024, and they're doing
Brennan
is it Western Reaches? I think it's a Western Reaches style game. Let me look this up, but my recollection is that gosh, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to look it up and I'm going to be wrong. But I think that they specifically were like, the setting is like a points of light setting where you have,
right.
these, little pips of civilization here and there, and then everywhere else it's darkness. I'll double check it during the
That was
conversation.
a very nice piece of fourth edition world. Yes. Yep.
Could you tell people who don't know about that, what that means?
Andy, I'm talking enough. You want to talk?
I would say that the points of light conceit, as it was explained to me, is the acknowledgement that Dungeons and Dragons works best when most of the world feels like dangerous, uncharted territory. There's a fog of war over it. Not that you don't know what's there, but you don't know exactly what dangers are waiting for you. Instead of adventuring across highly civilized land, everything looks kind of like the keep on the borderlands. There's a tiny little castle. It's holding ground against evil and darkness, but barely. And it's up to the characters to survive the journeys between those little points of light, towns, castles, what have you, while clearing back the darkness along the way. That sort of a frontier mentality worked better for Dungeons and Dragons than the campaign worlds that had gotten highly civilized, highly regimented, borders very clear. That sort of a leaning that was happening during second and third edition, we were trying to pull back from.
And in a certain sense, it's one of those decisions that factors into making adventurers like the characters important. This is not a world where its problems are solved. This is a world where ordinary people rely on heroes to set things right. And in I think like a extreme example of this was when I one of my favorite books to work on was the Plane Above, and I tried to figure out, how does heaven have trouble? And the answer was no, the afterlife is totally screwed up. Souls are being cast aside, distributed where they don't belong. The heroes show up and they've actually got something they need to do because this is broken. And so a broken heaven is basically like the divine version of the points of light situation. And I think that that was very different than some of the literature and stuff that we had done, but it could fit in. Yeah. And so I totally get it. Like, describing it as a points of life campaign makes total sense, for what a Critical Role streaming audience would be. Because one of the fun things about that is you can spring most anything and you don't have to have the feeling that, oh, we should have known. We should have known. How did you ambush us this month again?
Wow. Again, this is a very broad question, but does it provoke any feelings to see your work positively reappraised?
I mean, it's not terrible. Uh, like again, important to remember, Rob and I sat down to start working on that game 20 years ago and change.
Give me a minute.
Like
Hold
I've
on,
had an
hold on, hold on. Oh
entire
yeah.
career
Yeah.
since then.
Right.
Rob has published multiple RPGs, not to mention tabletop games beyond count. Like it's like at the time I saw it as like, wow, this is a pinnacle for me, right? Like I've risen up through the ranks for the last several years, and now they're letting me, at least ride along in the big car. But on the other hand, the thinking that I had then represents, you know, a game designer who had been at his work for under a decade, and now I've got almost 30 years.
Interesting.
Like I Yeah, it's great to see, but on the other hand, right, like as any designer, you always look back on your older stuff and see the warts and see the stuff you do different now, right? It's much harder to see the things that like, well, that worked really well. Like I really like how that came out. You always look back and go, I'd do it differently now. I don't know, Rob, do you feel the same way?
A little differently, because I think Jonathan and I have been actively engaged in designing the game we want to play together. Because he did third edition and I did fourth, when we can actually go ahead and agree on what we're going to do on 13th Age, it matters.
And you've been doing that publicly, right?
Yes,
I've been doing that privately, running
right.
my own homebrew D&D for the last, 15, 16 years since leaving Wizards.
Yeah, no, but it's like you've got your masterpiece
But
squirreled away in the
but yeah,
garret.
I've only got like 15 or 20 players that I've ever had to keep happy with this. You're
Right.
working with a slightly larger fan base.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, I've been processing fourth edition along with third and other games for a while. I think it makes me happy to see like specific mechanics and specific implementations of things. Like with Draw Steel, I have always liked mechanics where the player characters do something and they absolutely get to do a low level version, and maybe they're looking to do better. And that basically is Draw Steel's uh, action attack, combat and active action system. It's like you're always going to get some minimum effect. And 13th Age did that with miss damage, but we didn't go farther than that because Jonathan said, no, this is D&D. We got to have misses. We just got to have misses. We can't do everything. And I remember Yeah, so Epic Spell Wars, a card game that I did years ago, that game uses the like no matter how you roll, you're gonna do minimum something. And I am I'm personally really happy to see a game like Draw Steel go ahead and do that. I think it's great. Um, and so no, I think I'm when we did 13th Age, we were hoping that people would steal the ideas and use them, and occasionally it's happening. Because there are ideas that should be used by a lot of games. I personally haven't like interacted with Daggerheart yet, except to notice, ooh, if I was running a streaming game, that would make a ton of sense. But I'm not running a streaming game, so I'm not necessarily the target there. Um, so I think a little bit different than you, Andy. Maybe would you feel differently if you'd been publicly like if I don't know what to call your game, by the way, nameless. Like this podcast, it's nameless.
Yes, Andy's home game. Um, it's
AHD.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely true that after leaving Wizards, I essentially left the world of professional tabletop
Right.
RPG designer behind for the next
Yep.
decade plus. I have since come back to it and have been, not only my work on the Sigil project, but also some freelancing and contracting with other publishers.
Mhm.
Uh, and in a way, I feel like I never really left it. As I say, I was always designing at home. I like to
Yeah.
say I write players' handbooks as a hobby, not just as a profession. But on the other hand, it let me step away and let those things simmer rather than being front of mind.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't trying to like, okay, now it's time to take another swing and prove myself. It's like, no, I'm gonna do a different thing. I'm gonna work on writing characters and worlds and dialogue for computer games for
Yeah.
a while, and that was a
Yeah.
blast. Still doing it.
Yep.
I essentially had an entire second career after Wizards of the Coast, and now I'm doing both of them at the same time, which is interesting.
Nice.
What are you working on right now in the tabletop role playing game space?
Well, as it turns out, I have two different Kickstarters live right now. They're not mine, but they are projects that I have contributed to. With Ghostfire, I have an adventure called Ethereal Expanse: Dreams of a Drowned God. I literally just finished my draft of that work earlier this afternoon.
Huh.
So I contributed to that. The lead designer is a guy named Will Doyle. Very cool, swashbuckling, uh, astral seafaring adventure that Ghostfire is.
Ghostfire.
Yeah, they are kickstarting right now.
Hmm.
It's been up for a couple weeks now. And then earlier this week, a different Kickstarter of a project I worked on, Northlands from Kobold Press, just went live. So right now, in real time, I am watching a Kickstarter battle of Pirates versus Vikings,
And
which
you're partly responsible for it.
and I contributed to each one. One of them I was writing adventure material. The other one was more crunchy mechanics,
So are
spells,
you writing
monsters,
inflammatory
character traits.
screeds, like are inflammatory screeds on each of them under pseudonyms? Like, come on, we have to do better than those damn pirates
I have not tried to pit them against
against
each
each other.
other violently. I did do a social post to LinkedIn earlier today saying like, "Hey, come on, guys, vote for your favorite." Because obviously, I would like
With
them both to
money.
make a ton of money. Not that I'm going to see, anything
Yeah,
extra,
yeah,
but
right.
if they do well, maybe I get called
That's
back
fun.
for more work by the publishers. Both of them were fun. I have friends at both Kobold and Ghostfire, so it's great to just be able to sort of put those comfy shoes back on and
Cool.
write material like I did once before. Because as it turns out, like yeah, we get into all this hand wringing about how different editions are. They're really not, right? 90% of the words that you write for any product are probably the same no matter what version of D&D you're writing. Certainly no version in the last 25 years. Uh, that's my feeling. A little
Interesting.
a little tweaks at the end, but the ideation, the concepting, what makes things cool, I think there's I think there's an awful lot of similarity, more than most people would like to admit.
I think I might be one of those most people.
Or at least maybe that's the way I come at it, where I try to bring some new ideas. Certainly on Northlands, I definitely tried to bring some design concepts that were a little outside the fifth edition norm. Not
Yep.
that they were specifically from any other edition, but just like, hey, I've
Yep.
never seen spells that do this. There's
Right.
lots of spells that do types of damage in different shapes. What if I didn't write any of those? What if I just wrote a bunch of spells that let you mess with fate or channel
Sure.
great mythic monsters of, the sagas, that sort of thing. Just try to think in different spaces.
I think when you're talking about mechanics, I take your point. I mean, the thing is that the mindset that is required for handling mechanics in one system, it's pretty similar to the mindset in other systems. Like, because you are trying to make an experience that's fun for people, but and that also feels like something different. Even if it's quote familiar,
They're,
that's true.
they're, they're slightly different languages, but it's
Yeah.
not like one edition is English and the other one is Finnish,
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
right?
No.
It's like,
I think
okay,
that
I'm already fluent in Spanish. I'll bet I can pick up French without too much trouble.
it's true. And I think I have a pony in this race only in the sense that the way we've handled 13th Age story is very different than other games I've been involved with. And that is because the player characters are supposed to like tell the stories. The game and the world is not supposed to be designed by us
Right.
game people.
You've essentially almost kind of injected mechanics into your story, right? They maybe not
Yes,
as explicit as roll a die, this
there are some.
happens,
There are
but
some.
you structure. Maybe I'll say
Yes,
structure rather than
the
mechanics.
structures requiring the
And that
players to do that. Yeah,
and that's something that D&D has traditionally resisted, which
and I
is why
think
it's so fascinating to see it show up in other RPGs that
right,
are
right.
spin-offs from that core.
But in fact, it's very possible that one of the reasons D&D has resisted it is simply brand control. Like, because if you go ahead and let players make stuff up, it is harder to own the IP, basically.
It's also a harder lesson to teach, right? Like D&D, basically, it only really has to teach one person at the table a lot of stuff, and that's the dungeon master. And as
Yep.
long as they learn the core lessons, they can bring players along, even if the players don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
which is a strength, but can also be a weakness because it it robs them from the
Mhm.
opportunity to delve more deeply into storytelling as part of the experience rather than just, well, I roll a d20 and it
Right.
either works or not. Like it's no surprise to me that a lot of games are experimenting with mixed results. You succeed but at a cost,
Yes.
or narrate your action rather than just rolling a die and telling me. Like that's a space for a bit more experienced player, someone who wants to delve more
Yeah.
into the structure of storytelling, but it's not for everybody. Like I have some really great D&D players at my table who, when I start pushing a little more story structure
They
on
don't want
them,
it. Yeah.
they're yeah, it's not their bag.
It's
That's not what they
not
want to
what
be
they
playing.
gave up their Tuesday night to do. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't come natural to them.
Yeah.
Like streaming makes it look easy because it turns out if you get a bunch of actors sitting around a table, they're going to improv together really, really well,
Uh,
regardless of what your mechanics are. But not everybody has that skill set.
yep.
Rob, because the audience may not be familiar with 13th Age, could you give an example of the way 13th Age uses mechanics and story, like Andy was talking about?
Sure. All 13th age characters get to have a one unique thing, which is something that sets them apart from everybody else in the world. And that basically tells the game master kind of what you want the story to be about. If you say, I am the only human child ever born from a zombie mother, that game is going to be headed towards some very interesting divine divine human interactions and prophecy. And you set that up at first level and you're not that big a deal, but later on it'll be bigger. That's one thing that people get to do. And it's kind of like saying, if I was going to be a creature, a hero of legend, what people remember me? What's the weird thing that they'll remember me as? That's one way to look at it. And another one I would say is let's talk about a simple one. Um, Instead of a skill system where people have skills like pickpocket or horse riding, you have backgrounds. And in our word backgrounds means it's things you used to do, people you used to be. You could say, I was a failed temple guard and 3 points. And I was a sous chef at a monster restaurant, 4 points. And when I make a skill roll that feels like, oh, you know, I'm trying to do this identification of them. Oh, I'm going to do a cheap one. Well, there's clearly been a fight here, but nobody can tell what was the attackers. Hey, I was a sous chef at a monster restaurant. Finally. Well, I'm going to add my 4 points, and then you get to whenever you're making a skill roll, therefore, you get to tell a little backstory about why something about your past life helps you at this time to make a skill roll. And the result of that is oftentimes organizations and ideas and NPCs and skills that you bring into the game end up being part of the game for the rest of the campaign. And the player characters are just sort of generating that as a natural result of making a skill roll. Yep, that's probably the simplest example of what Andy was talking about. There's some more complex ones, but I don't want to go into that right now.
So go ahead, Rob.
Go buy the book. Go buy the book.
Yeah, go buy the book. And 13th Age, this is a funny note that I don't think I've told anybody. Pelgrane nailed the print run-in so well that they just ran out of first edition while the second edition books are shipping across the ocean. Which is funny though, because we need some copies. Like apparently some people in the Kickstarter bought the first edition also. And we've located them, right? But it wasn't in the Pelgrane warehouse. So it was, yeah, it was like, yeah. We need some copies of the old book, and we're not going to reprint it.
I'll sell you mine.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. A fund drive. Sell us your book. No, happily that won't be necessary. Although, I mean, yeah. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it.
So, since Rob is talking about again his development work off of 4E, Andy, can you tell us anything about your home D&D rule set that you've been working on?
It continues to morph and evolve from campaign to campaign. I think it's important to keep things fresh and tweak the rules to suit the setting you're using. The campaign I concluded last year was very dungeon focused with minimal role playing. It was almost focused entirely on combat. So as a result, I tweaked some of the classes and skills and stuff to point more in that direction. I'm in a little more traditional fantasy campaign right now, but with a heavy city intrigue layer to it. So I'm trying to make skills feel more important and not just skill checks, but the choices you make. So for a few campaigns now, I've had sort of a two-tier system of skills. I use skill proficiencies much like many previous editions of D&D have had, in a list that's similar, if not quite identical. But behind all of those skills are sitting what I'm currently calling feats that are essentially specializations that let you differentiate yourself, your character, from someone else with the same skill. Because what we found campaign after campaign is you'd be like, I want to be the guy that's good at arcana or thievery or whatever the skill was. And then somebody else would show up with similar skills on their list, and you'd feel like, oh, now I'm not special. Why would I even bother making those checks? You're 1 point higher than me. So what I said was, well, how do you make three characters who all took the history skill feel different? Like, well, you have feats. One of them is tactician. You've read all the history of war. So you've got a benefit on initiative checks, and somebody else is the monster lore specialist, so they know monsters backwards and forwards, and so on. So finding places where you can say three characters with stealth have three different versions of that skill really helped characters feel different from one another without creating a list of 50 skills. Because I think the game is better with fewer rather than more if you're using them in the way that D&D has been using them for the last 20 years, which is, make an X skill check. But I still wanted to find places to differentiate that reality. So that's a version that I've been using for a few editions. It's pretty fun. The crazy thing is I don't know if I'll keep it because my brain has been leaning more and more toward what Rob is describing for 13th Age of a little more free form system where the game doesn't rely on a list of skills that are all exclusive in that
Mhm.
like if you do a task with this skill, you can't do it with any other skill. Like that's a system that really forces the players to learn a lot and to remember a lot of realities. Like, oh, wait a minute, last time you let me make a history check to do that, and now you're letting him make an Arcana check. That's not fair. Like, well, okay, I
Uh,
guess I'll change my mind. And like that to
yeah,
me is not the fun part of the game.
no.
The fun part of the game should be letting everybody say, "This is why I'm cool right now."
Yeah.
I remember Skip Williams saying once, "How do you give an ability to the thief without taking it from everyone else?" And that's what comes to mind when I hear you talking about that. Um, all right, well, I'm gonna ask a question for me since I have both of you here, and I suppose it's somewhat selfish, and uh, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So I'm working on a book, Shock of Shocks, and I've been thinking again just about the broad strokes of D&D history. And as Rob mentioned earlier, you were asked to come up with a version of D&D that was going to be kind of video gamey, hopefully bring in new players that were familiar with video games. And even from a lot of critics of fourth edition, I'll hear, "Oh yeah, like the fourth edition was this innovative tactical combat fantasy game, great at the tabletop. Maybe it just didn't feel like D&D. Maybe the problem was the world changes." But it seems as though you succeeded at the task to which you were set. Um, and then you were both let go from D&D at some point. Did it feel like you succeeded at what you were asked to do, but were punished for it?
So it's a big question.
Only in a okay. Whenever somebody gets laid off at Wizards, the first thing that they make you sign is this thing saying, "I was not let go because of age, because I'm old. I'm not." One of the first things you can guess is that probably you were let go because you're old enough to make more money than the people who are about to replace you. And the fact is that, I mean, I absolutely, um, ended up getting paid enough money that I was worth letting go on the calculus, you know. So, and they replaced me with younger people who were expecting to be paid less. So I'm not really positive that that's a specifically D&D answer.
I from the position of someone who could watch Rob's departure in real time happen, I don't think I was managing you, but I was a manager in the department at that point,
Yep.
or about to be.
Yep.
Uh, I think the biggest problem was that the D&D team didn't know how to use Rob. Rob is too creative for a studio that just wants to be cranking out a steady supply of books that all kind of look and feel about the same.
Well, and also Rob is the wrong person because he tells the people running it that that's the wrong approach.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking
That
about some of the
too.
third. Yeah, exactly. So,
But like, yes, can I hand Rob a book like The Plane Above and have him go, you know what? I'm going to create a new version of Heaven that's innovative and focuses on what players need at the table, which is stuff to do, problems to solve. Yeah, of course he can. But like, do we really, can he do it 4 times a year, 5 times a year, 6 times a year? And just, and also, like, even if he does, those books aren't, they aren't getting enough penetration and making enough of a difference, right? What Rob should be doing is inventing entire new games, entire new genres, creating new worlds from scratch. And Wizards was not a place for that. Like, you got multiple games from you actually published, which is kind of a miracle at Wizards
yeah,
of
it
the
was
Coast.
it's true. Yeah,
Like
it
that,
was
that sort
odd.
of thing doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Uh, so like in a way, I, I
Well,
I could almost understand the calculus of like, yeah, we could keep paying Rob, a really gifted senior designer, for this job, but he wants to do things and he's really good at doing things that we don't really want to do. So,
right.
yeah,
And just in my particular case, I think that it would have required going back to card side again, for example.
yeah,
And I don't think card side wanted me at that time. So, you know,
yeah, you were an odd man out at that point.
so I left and got my revenge by
You
designing other games.
you were
So,
you were too much of a designer to work in RPGs, and you were too much of a writer and RPG person to go back into
maybe
the hard cold science of
something
cards.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a troublemaker. It's
Yeah,
also,
yeah, there's
yeah.
that. For me, even before my layoff, I was seriously wondering what more there was left for me
Mm.
in the hobby, right? Like I had risen from a lowly junior editor to working on back-to-back players handbooks, 3.5 and fourth, and then managing half of the department. Uh, I didn't want my boss's job, so there was nothing for me to keep going up through the ranks for. And uh, despite a couple of years spent managing really gifted folks, I never really felt like that was my calling. I tried hard. I feel like I was at least uh, a, a listening manager who tried to take the staff's concerns seriously and help them grow. But Wizards was not a place that trained managers in how to manage people, so it was very much a learn as I go. And I felt after a while that like, am I making a difference here? Is this really what I want to be doing? And if not, what else would I do here? I do not want to write another Draconomicon, right? That was
Oh,
the
gee.
example that I remember distinctly. We were going to do a fourth edition Draconomicon because, of course, we were. And I thought, wow, it would be a nightmare to be assigned to that book. I've already written this book once. What else do I have to say about dragons? And we not only did one of them, we did two of them, and we're starting to do a third, I think, that was
No, dude, I got a story for you.
so like
Wait, I
I
got a story for you.
there was nothing more for me to really accomplish at the company. So I remember actually having conversations with Slavasek of like, I don't know
Yeah.
what I should be doing next. And in hindsight, those probably got used against me.
Yeah.
Turns
That's
out you
probably,
shouldn't say things like that to your boss.
yeah. Okay, Draconomicon, really quick. The third one they tried to assign to me. I said no way for reasons similar to what you and that's what I said no way. I'm not going to do that. They did get a freelancer to do it. He wrote the whole thing, and then they realized that it was a terrible idea, and they killed it, paid him a kill fee. But our boss didn't know that. Like on my way out, I was like, I think I mentioned something about the ridiculous thing about writing a Draconomicon 3. He said, we never did that. That never happened. And I'm like, you're yeah, anyway, so it was pretty funny. It was like this element of me is going, oh man, you don't even know when like stuff happens that you don't want to know about. So yeah. Jonathan Tweet had the same thing happen. And when the what you were saying sort of about like getting laid off from Wizards. I'd already seen Jonathan get laid off at a time when Cardside wouldn't take him and role playing wouldn't take him, and it was kind of like, what? Jonathan?
Yeah.
So yeah.
The thing that I have said in the past about certain coworkers, and you're certainly in this bucket, Jonathan is as well, is like any game company that can't figure out how to make money off of Rob Heinsoo doesn't deserve to be making games,
Hmm.
right? Like we've all had coworkers like that
Yeah.
who just for whatever reason the company doesn't understand how to use, and you're like, you're crazy, right? This person is too smart, has too many ideas, and is not a terrible person to work with. Because one thing if they're just a raging crazy person that nobody can work with them, but that was not ever the case. So yeah,
Interesting. That question was a bit more interesting than I anticipated.
You're
Thank you, Aaron.
welcome.
Yeah.
for
Well,
me
sorry. No, it's
personally,
it's a weird one.
for me personally, leaving Wizards and working at other studios was the best thing that could have happened to me as a game designer. It opened my eyes to other
Mhm.
ways of solving problems and crafting games and producing entertainment that I never ever would have seen within the walls of Wizards of the Coast.
Interesting.
And like the
Yep.
fact is, working on a variety of projects with a variety of people in a variety of environments is really good for professional development. If you stay in the
Yes.
same place doing the same thing with nobody challenging you for years and years and decades, you get stale, right? It's just, you can't help but happen because the institution is designed to perpetuate itself, not to improve you or give
Right.
you professional challenges. D&D is not in the innovation business, right? Wizards of the Coast is not really in the innovation business the same way it was in, in its early decade or so. That
Sure.
doesn't
No.
have to be, right?
No.
It's very, very good at
Yeah.
producing products that are familiar and accepted by their base, right? Magic is an enormous brand. I'm not going to say that Wizards is not good at make game
Oh yeah.
product, but it's a limited scope of creativity and innovation.
Wow. Well, before giving you guys a chance to plug things, I was gonna ask, what?
Actually, I need a
Go.
break real
Okay,
quick.
take your break.
I
Go.
will be right back, but it will not take long.
Okay, no problem. I'm not gonna pause the recording. I'm just gonna make a note here. So 8:55 my time. Rob leaves because
And
he's too cool.
in case you need any more context on what I just said, is a commentary on the company and the institution, not on the people who are there.
I mean, I'm again. I think my next book is like gonna be 2000 to as close to the present as it can be. So I'm taking a kind of wide look at things, and the it's not a place for innovation. Um, the
Except within very narrow boundaries, right? There's no question people are innovating on magic cards, right? Hey, here's a new mechanic to add to magic. Here's a new world to explore. That is innovation. It's a very narrow range that is allowed to their designers. They don't like, nobody says, make us a new game. That just doesn't really happen. It hasn't for a while.
the designers that I regard as the most brilliant are not usually the ones of the longest pedigree or longevity, I should say, at the company. Um, and why is that? Why again? Like Rob is a great example of like, man, I would listen to him talk for hours. Like it's absolutely fascinating what's going on between those ears. Um, but like
I have, and it is.
the.
Yeah, exactly. But the company has built itself to make a limited number of things very efficiently that appeal to their audience. That is a great way of staying in business, uh, at least in the short term. Um, but it's not how you nurture new talent to explore new areas of design, right?
Well, and I don't know if you've been looking at anything the company has been saying recently, but it sure seems like they they don't know where they're going. Like,
I know too much of what is still true behind the scenes to comment on that.
my podcast listeners would be so excited, Andy, but okay.
Yeah, yeah, no.
We talked about you the whole time you were gone, Rob.
Nope, untrue.
All right.
Okay.
So, let me try and wrap this up quickly. Um, could you guys give me an example of something that's exciting you in the tabletop role-playing game space right now? Unless there's nothing, maybe there's nothing.
Space. Well, I've got a hold of Daggerheart and Drawsteel, and I've enjoyed reading pieces of both of them quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to getting a hold of a copy of Triangle Agency.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, those three.
Yeah, I'll echo that to a certain extent. While I'm not deep into analysis of those games, I have skimmed through their rules, and I am excited by the energy that their designers and their fans are showing in forcefully exploring new areas that tabletop fantasy games can explore, without going all the way into this is a super niche indie game that is for me and my six friends, right? They're really trying to build audiences by focusing on particular aspects of, call it, the D&D experience, that they think they can iterate on and deliver a great experience for. Like that's great, right? Like that's what helps drive innovation in role-playing games is more designers going, hey, you know what? What if we did it differently? And I think D&D needs competitors in their space because it will make the company and the D&D team work harder. D&D will become a better game if there are good games competing for customers with them.
In closing, what can people purchase that puts royalties in your pocket? Andy, you got two Kickstarters going right now. I'll put links to those in the show notes. Anything else that people should buy to get a
Sure.
larger draft of Andy Collins?
I am also serving as the lead writer for a computer game called Swap Meet. That's MEAT. It is a fast-paced co-op roguelite shooter where you run around alien worlds, blasting mutant monsters, tearing off their body parts, and swapping them in for your own crappy fleshy parts. Want spider legs to climb up a wall? Done. Want to swap out a robot head from that monster you just defeated? Great. Now your eyes shoot lasers. It is crazy. It is an absolutely nutball game. I came aboard end of the spring. They needed somebody to help wrangle their narrative ideas together into one thing. I was just at PAX and got to show it on the floor to folks and watch their expressions as they're like, "What the hell is this thing?" It's very bright colored and cartoony. It's got kind of a Rick and Morty vibe to it of this is all absurd, but it's all real, so just go with it and keep going. So I'm wrangling story and crafting characters and writing dialogue and that sort of thing. So Swap Meet from One More Game. Uh, we just entered a public playtest. Depending on how long until this podcast airs, it may be closed already, but definitely check out playswapmeet.com. That's SWAPMEAT because you're swapping meat.
Play swap meet. Let me just write that
Playswapmeet.com. One more game. It's going to come out later this year in 2025, so we're getting close to it.
And
That's been a
Rob,
blast.
what can people buy that will put royalties in your pocket?
The really very soon answer is 13th Age second edition. So it's a two books this time in a slipcase. and it's available from Pelgame Press on pre-order right now. If you buy the printed books, you'll get copies of the PDFs. And I'm really happy with how they look as well as how they read. And they're still compatible with everything that was published for first edition.
Very cool.
So that's the big thing. There's two other things I guess I can mention really quick. I did a really fun board game called Armello, the board game, which is based on and it is a funny animal combat questing deck builder as animals, the heroes kill each other in attempting to become king on a board running around. And it's beautiful because if the Armello board game, the Armello computer game was originally kickstarted and from Australia by the League of Geeks, and they had all their art assets. And it is also on a boat coming this way. So that's kind of a, yeah. So
As long as Rob is going to name more than one, then I'm going to toss out another
do
one
it.
too. Not a super recent project, but has a game that has just hit shelves after a Kickstarter fulfillment is a board game from Ghostfire Gaming called Aberration. It's a Peter Lee design. Peter's a good friend of mine, and he reached out to ask me for some design development a little while back as that game was coming in for a landing. So I jumped in and helped him and the Ghostfire lead developer, Mark McIntyre, polish the game, play test it, and deliver a final version. It is out now. Couldn't be happier with how cool it looks and feels. So Aberration, it's a grim horror tower defense game where you and your buddies play adventurers defending a village in the woods from encroaching monsters and darkness. So it's set in Ghostfire's Grim Hollow setting, which is like as if you took Fantasy Tales, the darkest versions of Fantasy Tales, and cranked them up to 11.
Very cool. And I will close by saying, listeners, we have a Patreon for a mere $3 a month, gains you access. We have a Discord, which is very lively. I'm currently, I discovered a couple days ago that I've written 25,000 words about the creation of third edition D&D that has never seen the light of day. So I am posting those 25,000 words on the Discord and sending them out to Patreon subscribers. So a mere $3 a month gets you a peek at that. We've also done patron-only episodes with people like Zeb Cook, Sandy Peterson, Ken Hite, Peter Adkison. So again, for $3 a month, and we hope that that's going to stay there for a good long time, and we'll never have another tier. You get access to all that good stuff. So please go forth.
Are you going to tell us all how you managed to misplace 25,000 words?
It was just, I mean, you write a book, you finish it,
and then there's outtakes.
Well, then your editor is like, no, we're stopping here. We're going to stop here at this point. And I'm like, okay, that's where we're stopping, I guess. And then years pass, and you're like, I'm working on another book now. I know I wrote something on third edition. How much was it? Holy crap! 25,000 words.
All right.
So that's my excuse.
That's a happy, yeah. You got to write a thank you note to your editor. Dear editor, at the time, I thought very poorly of you, but now...
Shh. I love my editor.
Quarter of my next book.
Yeah, that's great. So, guys, it's been amazing talking to you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time.
Welcome, Ben. Thanks for having us on.
Sorry we ran over a little bit, but you guys enjoy your night, okay?
Take care. Rob, see you around.
Bye-bye. See you, Andy.
Bye-bye.